What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the second album by rapper Jamie Madrox of Twiztid. Basically, this project is called Phatso, and it came out in the spring of 2006. Now, Jamie Madrox, as Mr. Bones, had dropped an album called Sacrifice, which came out in like the mid 90s and stuff. And he was also part of like a group with the ROC and Monoxide Child, which was called Jamie Madrox was also in a group with Monoxide Child and the ROC called the House of Crazies, which dropped some stuff in like the 90s and stuff. And they might have dropped like a few other projects here and there. I'm gonna have to know about them more. But I would definitely have to say this. I would have to say this is a pretty stellar project here. It's interesting to kind of get the solo out. It's pretty interesting to get these solo albums by the Twiztid members. I am eventually going to review the Monoxide Child album Chainsmoker LP also. I definitely want to get to that one. Definitely looks pretty sick. I definitely want to check that one out. But this one was kind of one that was in the pipelines. This is kind of one that was in the pipeline. So I wanted to start messing with more in the Twiztid fold and that type of stuff. Blaze Ya Dead is on here. Monoxide Child is on here, and he produces some good beats on here. And there's some other cats on here. So it's definitely some good stuff. Yeah, I like the concept of this particular project, but the thing about it is it's not quite as grim as like a typical Twiztid album. Like the usual Twiztid stuff has a lot more kind of just overall sprawling and kind of more horrific and kind of overall ghoulish type productions. But a lot of this is actually pretty. A lot of this on here is pretty pedestrian. I would actually say that the best beat on here is Freak Out, but there are some kind of haunting ones. But this is kind of more like early September, mid September type fare, more so than the typical kind of late October Halloween S type stuff that Twiztid usually does. But there are some grim ones, but just not to that severe degree that you would typically find. I couldn't find like a single on this. I couldn't find like a single on this project either, so that's somewhat of a disappointment that there wasn't more promotion for this project. I think that Jamie Madrox and Monoxide Child wanted there to be like more focus on Twiztid. But I look after the concept. It's kind of like what happened with Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope, where they kind of sometimes do solo stuff, but it's just not very often. But I like the concept of at least seeing the Twiztid fold as to what could have happened with some of these. There is more like this is Jamie Madrox's second album, so there's also Sacrifice, and I want to say that that was re-released in 2010 and that type of stuff. Monoxide Child at least has Chainsmoker LP, and you know, you got Blaze Ya Dead stuff, you got the House of Crazy stuff. So there is some good stuff on here, but this is kind of, yeah, like I was saying, this pedestrian. Yeah, like I was saying, this is just kind of more pedestrian type productions on here. It's not so much in a bad way, like this is subpar and that type of stuff, but it's just interesting that these are a lot more low key. They just kind of feel like leftover kind of lackadaisical Twiztid songs in a sense of just kind of more residential type fares and just kind of out and about bops, just in a more kind of day hopping city sense, more so than the night fare that you usually get. So it's interesting. We'll kind of go in on some of these. You'll see what I'm talking about. So there's 12 songs on this album if you subtract the two skits on here. So out of those 12 songs, I wound up recommending to you 7. So I'm gonna go ahead and recommend these. So they would be Freak Out, Sour Batch Bitches, Tearjerker, Get 'em, This Bitch, Keep On, and Pledge Allegiance. So there are some good bops on here. I would have to say that this bitch is a gem on here. It has Monoxide Child on here, which is pretty dope. And this is like an out and about kind of mid-graze jingle of a song. I would say it's a mellow day haze, definitely, and it has a nice regular feel, and it's a pretty dope song. This one's just really kind of laid back, just out and about, just kind of more at like diners and kind of more kickback, just kind of regular day hopping type stuff. Just mellow, almost kind of late summer haze, that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. This reminds me of some more relaxing kind of comfy type tunes, just in a hazy kind of sense. So I definitely like the concept of that, just being out and about, just lazy kind of day, just really like the mid-graze kind of feel of this one. It's good. Just feels like a song like this is the sort of stuff like Twiztid doesn't always do like summery kind of tunes, but this is kind of out of character for the Twiztid crew as far as this kind of goes, or it's kind of has a little bit of haziness towards it, but it also just kind of feels a lot more pedestrian. It's a good mellow kind of lazy beat, but this is interesting because it's different from the Twiztid fold, but it works pretty well. That's a good one. Tearjerker is a pretty nice one. This is the most popular song according to Spotify from what they thought of it. I don't know if this was a single, but this is definitely the most popular song according to Spotify. So this is kind of a leery, ruminating gem. Has a great ghoulish residential type beat on here, and this is a smoke a few cut and a personal gem. So yeah, Tearjerker is just kind of a leery type one. Definitely some of the typical Twiztid that you would hear from like their normal fare as far as kind of goes. Just a personal bop from Jamie Madrox as far as that's kind of concerned. Definitely like this one. Definitely just reminds me of a good song to smoke to on a walk home, something like that. Just getting some snacks, some of those type tunes as far as that kind of goes. Definite nice one. Another a club bop on here that's really nice that there definitely need to be more songs like was Freak Out. This is a pretty snazzy dance bop. I would have to say it's an electro hopper with like good pizzazz about it, and it has a commercial type appeal about it. So yeah, Freak Out feels ringtone ready. This is definitely one of the more boppish songs on this particular album. Definitely like this one quite a bit. This is just one that kind of feels like a snap kind of dance club kind of hopper, kind of similar to the stuff that kind of like Toe Tags and Body Bags by Blaze Ya Dead Homie. This is definitely kind of a nice, this probably could have been a single. I feel like this is just that good of a song as far as that kind of goes. Definite nice one. Sour Batch Bitches with Blaze Ya Dead Homie is a nice one on here. It's a hazy kind of summery glaze of a song, definitely, and it's a nice mellow ladies bop, definitely, and it's an easy smoke a joint type tune, and it just has some comfy appeal. Definitely would have to say about this one. This is just kind of more twisted. This is definitely more twisted like antics as far as that's kind of concerned. Just another one that's kind of out and about, kind of similar to like This Bitch, definitely. These are just some kind of more lazy kind of just late summer kind of out on the town type stuff, just maybe being around diners and just city hopping type bops as far as that's kind of concerned. I mean, these are just more residential, so it's not like big city flashing lights that it kind of reminded me of, but definitely in the concept of just like some residential, just walking to like KFC, something like that, getting some snacks, some of those type tunes, picking up like a 2 liter, some of those type things, getting like a fifth of vodka, something like that. You know, just standard stuff as far as that kind of goes. This ladies bop that just works pretty well. This standard kind of September, this kind of standard September, early October kind of haze as far as that kind of goes. Just good haziness about it. So that's a good bop. Pledge Allegiance is a pretty stellar song on here. This is a merry, haunting stroll of a tune, definitely. It feels like vintage juggalo music, and it's just nicely grim and social. So I'd have to say about this particular song, it's kind of one of the more haunting ones on here, kind of similar to Keep On and Tearjerker and some of those type ones. Definitely like the boppish type appeal. This one could be like a cousin of like Freak Out, where this one's not quite as much of a dance club song, but I do feel like Pledge Allegiance is definitely one that has some jive towards it. Definitely a good kind of relative hangout. Just maybe you're on a stroll of getting ready to go somewhere, just kind of pepping your step type stuff as far as having a little bit of jive and bustle about it, but still kind of being still somewhat relatively residential as far as that's kind of concerned. I feel like Freak Out is definitely the club song on here, and there's probably another one on here. I feel like Get 'em pretty much. I feel like Get 'em has pretty good social fare about it, but Pledge Allegiance is kind of a social one. It's kind of a typical kind of juggalo type tune as far as that kind of goes, just in a sense of like a little bit residential, but having some, yeah, just good bustle about it. So I definitely like that one. Keep On is kind of an ominous, ruminating gem, and it has typical Twiztid horror feel about it, but it's not really horrorcore that much. It's just kind of more in like a horrific kind of October, September kind of feel, definitely. And it's a good autumn bop. So this is one, definitely like the ominous piano beat on here. This works pretty well for it. It's a good kind of bop to kind of have. This one's not quite as much of like a jivey kind of tune, but I do like the concept of this just being a regular kind of Twiztid type feel as far as that kind of goes. It's a good standard album cut that works pretty well. Good song for Jamie Madrox as far as that kind of goes. And then I would say Get 'em is a low-key night gem. Definitely, this is a good hangout tune, and I would say it's a sluggish, Twiztid-like gem, and it's just a murky song with a catchy beat. So this is kind of one, a little bit boom bap at the beginning of the song, but it definitely reminds me of like there's another song it reminds me of on here. Kind of reminds me of Pledge Allegiance a little bit of Pledge Allegiance. Get 'em and Pledge Allegiance are kind of similar. These are both kind of leery, kind of hangout type tunes, I would have to say. They're both kind of sluggish, but they're also, I feel like Get 'em and Pledge Allegiance are pretty sluggish, but they're also pretty social as far as that kind of goes. I feel like Pledge Allegiance has a little bit more peppiness towards it, but Get 'em is definitely kind of like the more kind of lazy, kind of low key, kind of hangout type tune. But it's kind of like a combination of like Freak Out and Pledge Allegiance, where Freak Out is definitely the most lively song on here, I would have to say, but I do like the concept of Get 'em just kind of being like a good hangout, kind of smoke a joint type tune, just kind of kick back a bit, have some pizza, some of those type things as far as that kind of goes. It's a good, nice one to kind of have, just in a kind of a horrific type feel as far as that kind of goes. This is just kind of one. So yeah, I mean, the thing about this album by Jamie Madrox, this Phatso album, is it kind of keeps the horrific type feel about it in like a mild sense, but this is kind of more, to me, this strikes me as more of like mid-September, early October type music, more so than the typical kind of fare for Twiztid, as far as like it just being in the crest of like the horrific, stepping out in like an autumn sense, the Halloween parties and like the haunted houses, that type of stuff, as far as some of those things kind of go and such. But this is just kind of this good kind of residential stuff, is just some good residential strolling, just kind of walking up the streets, kind of getting snacks type tunes, just easy kind of merry stuff as far as that kind of goes. And especially in the sense of for the ladies and stuff, I definitely like the one Sour Batch Bitches and then This Bitch and some of those type ones, and Freak Out's a pretty good one for that too. So it's definitely a good concept. But to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy on here, Talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy on here. There's just some poor productions on here that just don't really add up to much of like an engaging kind of listen. It's just kind of the five ones that I didn't pick, like Hey Fatty, Take It For What It Is, Four Fists, Two Axe Handles, just all kind of had some ones that just didn't jump off the page quite as well. OMG was kind of another one like that. And then Big Guns was just not quite as yeah, I just feel like the arrangements of some of these songs, like OMG, Four Fists, Two Axe Handles, Take It For What It Is, they just didn't quite have the concocted atmosphere as far as what they need. I definitely feel like songs like Sour Batch Bitches, This Bitch, some of those type ones, Freak Out especially, just jumped off the page a lot better and just were more solidified and kind of electric kind of cut. So you can definitely kind of tell like the more just kind of poor versions like Ruminating and just kind of more album cuts that just don't add up to much apart from some of these ones that kind of have more electricity like Get 'em, or ones that have more electricity like Get 'em or Freak Out or This Bitch, and like Keep On, some of those type ones, definitely in terms of some of those concepts, and even some of the ones that have more good ruminating fare like Tearjerker. Even ruminating songs like Tearjerker just have more jump off the page type appeal. It just really boils down to when the production kind of slips a bit and it just doesn't add up to quite as much electricity, it kind of bogs down this project. So that's kind of the thing about it. But in terms of score, I'm going to score this album. I'm going to basically give this album, me liking 7 songs out of 12 on here. I'm going to go ahead and give this album, in terms of what I'm going to score this album, I'm going to give this album like a 6.75 out of 10 because I feel like it has a fair amount of good gems on here. Definitely some songs like Freak Out and Sour Patch Bitches and Pledge Allegiance and some of those type ones. This Bitch with Monoxide Child and some of those type ones. But I kind of feel like it's still somewhat patchy and just doesn't wholesomely deliver. It's not like an all the way home kind of affair as far as getting like the sheer batch of just like quality hits. I feel like there's just some subpar beats on here that kind of bog this project down, and there just need to be more bops on here and kind of more ringtone kind of dance moments, and definitely a single. I would have to say a single would have definitely helped out this project quite a bit. Maybe they just didn't want to detract from Twiztid, but I kind of look after it. It's just something that probably could have been necessary. A little bit more ramped up electric kind of vibe for the productions for some of these, more dance heavy beats on here. Maybe like Blaze You Dead could have been on here a little bit more. The ROC could have been on here. ICP could have been on here. Shaggy 2 Dope. Shaggy 2 Dope or Violent J could have been on here. Some stuff like that. Boondocks, some of those type cats, or even Tech 9, something like that. Some of those type cats would have definitely worked. But and yeah, I just would have to say again, there definitely need to be another song like Freak Out. I mean, that's just one of the best songs on here. And I would have to say, I also like Sour Batch Bitch is pretty good. Pledge Allegiance was a really nice one. It's one of the better songs on here. And just songs like Get 'em and some of those type ones. It just is kind of, there's just kind of a bit of patchiness on this project where you just kind of are hungry for more songs just with a lot of more electric kind of bite and just more kind of jive that it just kind of has. But I feel like even songs like Tearjerker could have probably been another good assortment to have, something, another ruminating gem. If it was going to kind of try to fill out and be more album quality, just in terms of being a more wholesome album, maybe it could have had more productions as good as Tearjerker. So it's just kind of, it just felt like it just didn't pack the pungent bite of like a normal Twiztid album as far as like the compact kind of varietized songwriting kind of went. Plus the kind of somewhat subpar productions didn't help. So that's kind of the thing. But in terms of the social score, I'm going to give this album like, I'm going to give the social score of this album like a 5.75 out of 10, just because I kind of feel like it had some good stuff on here, but I kind of feel like they're not being a single, and just kind of the production's not really wholesomely immediately kind of jumping off the page. It's just a lot more low key. It's kind of more stuff that you have to search and kind of dig for a bit to kind of get towards. It just doesn't have like that immediate single, or just something like We Don't Die by Twiztid, something like that. That this is like an immediate kind of highlighted. And even on Spotify, it kind of felt like most of these are just kind of, or some of them were kind of popular, but they just didn't have like that immediate kind of breadwinner that would sell the album and stuff. So those kind of things. So 5.75 social. In terms of the future, like Jamie Madrox really does. In terms of the future, like Jamie Madrox really doesn't do that much solo stuff, but he has been pretty active with Twiztid. They have some recent projects, 2021, 2022 stuff like that. So we're gonna have to get to some more of these, but this is a pretty good assortment of stuff on here. Just a good kind of detour to kind of fuck with and vibe with. And this is a good kind of detour to kind of vibe with and fuck with. It's not a wholesome classic, but it does well enough to kind of be worth looking into.